What happens when a young tennis player becomes so valuable that two global sportswear giants are suddenly fighting over her future? That is the question surrounding Alex right now, because the reported Adidas offer has turned her rise from an inspiring tennis story into something much bigger. A commercial battle that could change how the tennis world values the next generation. According to the source material, Adidas has reportedly offered Alex a deal worth roughly double what Nike had been paying her, with industry estimates suggesting her total sponsorship potential could approach $10 million a year. If those figures prove accurate, this is not simply another endorsement announcement. It would represent a stunning jump for a 21-year-old player who is still building her Grand Slam resume. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that this story did not begin with money. It began years ago, when Nike backed Alex as a young prospect and watched her develop from a promising junior into one of the most recognizable young names in tennis. Nike was there through important stages of her development, creating a relationship that appeared almost impossible to break. The brand celebrated her Filipino identity, including special details connected to her heritage and memorable moments from her Wimbledon journey. That history makes the reported Adidas move even more dramatic. Because if a player can move from being a carefully developed prospect at one of the biggest sportswear companies in the world to becoming the target of an enormous competing offer, something important has changed. Alex's value is no longer being measured only by rankings, match wins, or tournament results. It is being measured by attention, loyalty, cultural impact, and the ability to make people care about tennis. And that may be the real reason Adidas became interested. Think about what happened around Alex during her breakthrough period. She was not simply competing on court while thousands of people watched from the stands. Her matches began attracting passionate Filipino supporters who turned tournaments into something resembling home events. The source material points to major fan interest in places such as Toronto, Cincinnati, Washington, and New York, with Filipino supporters traveling, buying tickets, filling sections of stadiums, and following her journey with extraordinary enthusiasm. That kind of audience is incredibly valuable to a global brand. A company is not only purchasing a logo on a player's clothing, it is purchasing access to a community. And Alex brings something that very few young tennis players can offer, a powerful connection between sport and national identity. For millions of Filipino fans, her success means more than another result on a tennis scoreboard. She represents possibility. She represents a country producing a new sporting star on one of the world's biggest stages. That emotional connection can turn a tennis match into an event, and it can turn a jersey, shirt, shoe, or campaign into something fans actually want to own. This is where the reported Adidas offer becomes so interesting. If Adidas really is prepared to pay approximately twice Nike's previous figure, the company is effectively betting on what Alex could become, not simply what she has already achieved. That distinction matters. Tennis sponsorships are often built around future potential. Brands want athletes before everyone else realizes how valuable they can become. And Alex's trajectory has given Adidas a reason to believe that her biggest commercial moments may still be ahead. Her Wimbledon breakthrough was one major turning point. The source describes her becoming the first Filipino to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam singles tournament and defeating defending champion Iga Swiatek on center court, a result that dramatically increased global attention around her. Then came another important step with her first WTA Tour title in Washington. Suddenly, the story was no longer about a talented young player trying to break through. It was about an athlete proving that she could translate attention into serious results. That combination is extremely powerful for sponsors. A player who is popular but cannot consistently compete at the highest level creates one kind of commercial opportunity. A player who combines popularity with breakthrough performances creates something entirely different. Suddenly, every tournament becomes another opportunity for a brand to be seen, every upset becomes a headline, and every deep run creates another wave of social media attention. That is the Alex effect. And the more people watched, the more valuable that effect became. The comparison with Emma Raducanu also became difficult to ignore. After Raducanu's US Open breakthrough in 2021, her commercial appeal exploded, and major brands moved quickly to associate themselves with her. The source material uses that example as a benchmark for Alex's growing sponsorship potential. But there is one important difference. Alex's commercial rise is happening while her tennis story is still being written. She has not needed to win a Grand Slam title to create enormous interest. Her Filipino fan base, international visibility, and rapid improvement have already generated serious commercial momentum. That is exactly the kind of situation that makes brands nervous about waiting too long. If a company waits until a player wins a Grand Slam, the price can become dramatically higher. Adidas appears, at least according to the claims in the source material, to have recognized that possibility early. The company would not simply be buying today's Alex. It would be buying a position in tomorrow's Alex. And that is a very different calculation. Consider the names already connected with her commercial story. The source lists Nike, Babolat, Globe Telecom, Bank of the Philippine Islands, Milo Philippines, Locally Juice, and Marriott Bonvoy among the brands associated with Alex. Marriott's involvement is especially significant because it demonstrates how her appeal can move beyond traditional tennis equipment and into international lifestyle marketing. The source states that Alex was selected for Marriott Bonvoy's Tennis the World campaign in Asia-Pacific and quotes the company's regional commercial leadership describing her as authentic, inspiring, and strongly connected to the region. That language tells us something important about how brands see her. They are not necessarily looking at Alex simply as an athlete who wins matches. They are looking at her as a personality capable of representing an entire market. That distinction could become one of the biggest advantages of her career. But then comes the question everyone naturally asks: what happened with Nike? After years together, why would a relationship that appeared so strong suddenly become vulnerable? The source material claims Nike made an effort to retain Alex but could not match the reported Adidas valuation. If that is accurate, Nike faced a difficult business decision. How much do you pay for a young athlete whose ceiling is still uncertain? Do you match an enormous offer because you believe she could become one of the sport's biggest stars? Or do you step back and protect your commercial strategy? That decision becomes even more complicated because Nike has experienced a changing tennis landscape. The source points out that the company has faced increased competition from Adidas and other brands as the sport moves beyond the era when Nike's dominance was almost unquestioned. For years, the swoosh was practically synonymous with tennis greatness. Serena Williams, Rafael Nadal, and many other elite players helped build that identity. But the next generation is creating a different market, and brands are fighting aggressively for future stars. Adidas has increasingly positioned itself as a serious force in tennis, and signing a player with Alex's combination of talent and audience would fit perfectly into that strategy. It would also send a message to the rest of the sport. Adidas is willing to make major investments before a player reaches the absolute peak. That message could influence other young players and their agents. Suddenly, Alex's reported deal is not just about Alex. It becomes a signal about what the market may be willing to pay for emerging tennis stars with powerful fan bases. And that is where the story gets even more interesting. Imagine being another 19-, or 21-year-old tennis player watching this unfold. You may not have won a Grand Slam yet. You may not even be ranked among the very best players in the world. But if you can build a passionate audience, connect with an important market, perform on major stages, and create a recognizable identity, brands may begin to see you differently. The traditional formula was simple: win first, become famous second. The modern sports economy is more complicated. Sometimes visibility accelerates performance, and sometimes a powerful audience can make an athlete commercially valuable before the trophies arrive. Alex's story appears to sit directly in the middle of that transformation. Yet there is another reason this reported Adidas move has generated so much attention: the Filipino diaspora. Alex's audience is not limited to one country. Filipino communities around the world have demonstrated a remarkable ability to rally behind her. When she plays in major cities, supporters can create an atmosphere that makes her presence feel much larger than the tournament itself. For Adidas, that matters enormously. Global companies spend billions trying to build emotional connections with consumers. Alex already has one. She does not need to manufacture a story about where she comes from or why people care about her. Her story is already deeply personal to her fans. She carries the hopes of a country that has historically produced legendary athletes in other sports, and she is now creating a new chapter in tennis. That is difficult to replicate through advertising. You cannot simply buy that kind of authenticity. You have to earn it. And Alex has been earning it match by match. This is why the reported value of the deal matters less than what the deal represents. Whether the final number is exactly $10 million, somewhat lower, or ultimately structured through several different sponsorship arrangements, the underlying message is powerful. Alex's commercial ceiling has risen dramatically. The source estimates her sponsorship potential at around $10 million annually, while comparing that figure with the much larger off-court earnings of established stars such as Coco Gauff. The important point is not that Alex has already reached that level. It is that the gap may be narrowing faster than many expected. And if she adds more deep Grand Slam runs, more titles, or eventually a major championship, the commercial equation could change again. Every major result creates another reason for brands to invest. Every viral moment increases recognition. Every packed stadium demonstrates demand. Every new sponsor adds another layer to her global profile. That creates a feedback loop. Success creates attention. Attention creates commercial opportunities. Commercial opportunities increase visibility, and visibility brings even more people into the story. The biggest question now is whether Alex can turn this commercial explosion into sustained sporting success. Because sponsorship money can create headlines, but it cannot win matches. Adidas can provide clothing, marketing campaigns, global exposure, and financial security, but when Alex walks onto the court, she still has to serve, return, defend, attack, and handle the pressure. In fact, a major sponsorship deal can create an entirely new type of pressure. Suddenly, expectations become higher. Every tournament is analyzed differently. Every loss creates questions. Every victory becomes part of a larger commercial narrative. Alex will need to protect the thing that created all this interest in the first place, her tennis. That may be the hardest part of the entire story. The world is beginning to recognize her as a global personality, but the most important question remains: what happens when the next opponent stands across the net? Can she keep improving? Can she become a consistent top-level competitor? Can she go from breakthrough star to genuine Grand Slam contender? Those answers will determine whether this reported sponsorship battle becomes a brilliant investment or simply a fascinating moment in tennis history. And there is another layer to consider: Nike's legacy with Alex. The source material describes a relationship stretching back to 2019, including special Wimbledon-related gestures and appearances connected to her Filipino heritage. That history cannot be erased by a new contract. Nike helped build the foundation of her commercial identity, and Adidas would be stepping into the next chapter. In sports, that happens all the time. One brand discovers an athlete, another brand benefits from the athlete's explosion, and the market keeps moving. But if Adidas really has doubled the previous value, then Nike's decision will inevitably be examined in hindsight. Did Nike correctly calculate Alex's potential? Did the company underestimate the speed of her rise? Or was the reported Adidas offer simply too aggressive to justify matching? We may not know the answer for years. What we do know is that Alex has reached a stage where global companies are no longer waiting for permission to believe in her. They're making bets. And the biggest bet, according to the source material, may have come from Adidas. The three stripes would not just be appearing on the clothing of another young tennis player. They would be attaching themselves to one of the most compelling emerging stories in international tennis. A Filipino player breaking barriers. A young woman attracting fans across continents. A rising competitor whose biggest achievements may still be ahead. That is a powerful package. It also explains why this story has resonated so strongly with fans. To many supporters, the Adidas-Nike battle feels like confirmation that Alex has arrived. Not arrived at the final destination, but arrived at the level where the world's biggest companies recognize her potential. And perhaps that is the most exciting part. The sponsorship story is happening before the final chapter of the tennis story. There are still Grand Slam draws to navigate, difficult opponents to defeat, rankings to climb, titles to chase, and records that could eventually be broken. If Alex keeps progressing, today's reported numbers could someday look small. If she wins a Grand Slam, the commercial conversation could explode again. If she becomes a consistent top 5 player, brands may compete even more aggressively for her attention. And if she becomes a champion while maintaining the connection she has with Filipino fans, she could establish a commercial identity unlike anything tennis has seen from the Philippines before. So when people ask who won the reported sponsorship battle, the obvious answers are Nike or Adidas. But maybe that misses the bigger point. Adidas may have won the negotiation. Nike may have lost a rising star. But Alex is the person who walks away with the greatest leverage. She now has proof that her value is being recognized at the highest commercial level. She has demonstrated that her audience matters. She has shown that her story can attract international attention. And she has created a situation where brands must think carefully about what she could become next. That is an extraordinary position for a 21-year-old athlete. But the most important chapter has not been written yet. The next time Alex walks onto a major court, the headlines will not be about contracts alone. People will be watching to see whether the player behind the business story can keep delivering the moments that created the business story in the first place. Because sponsorships can make an athlete famous, but unforgettable performances are what turn fame into legacy. And Alex now has an opportunity to chase both. The reported Adidas deal may be worth millions, but the real value of this moment is the message it sends. The tennis world is no longer asking whether Alex belongs among the sport's future stars. It is asking just how high she can go. And if the rise of Alex has taught us anything, it is that the next surprise may be much bigger than a sponsorship deal. The question is no longer whether the Alex effect is real. The question is what happens when it reaches its full potential. Stay tuned, because that part of the story may be the most extraordinary chapter yet.